San Francisco 49ers training camp just underway, but after a couple of days of practice, there are a few clear winners, young players with huge opportunities, and part of it due to some veterans holding out and not practicing, looking for new contracts, giving guys opportunities. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we always love it and appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button. I mean, so many of even our everyday listeners aren't subscribed. What are you doing? Hit subscribe right now. Pause, hit subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. It helps us out tremendously, and we appreciate you for it. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Croc, camp. It's on. We've heard from Kyle Shanahan a couple of times, hearing from Nick Sorensen, the new 49ers defensive coordinator. He's a man of few words, not giving a lot of clues about what might be different about the defense this year versus the group under Steve Wilks last year. But I think there are some things we can absolutely take away. And look, I don't think we even need to see practices, Croc, to know of some players that have huge opportunities. And let's start with the quarterbacks. And I want to get to some other young players that are, Danny Gray, Dee Winters, that have massive opportunities and are making the most out of it so far in the early parts of camp. But, come on, we haven't talked quarterbacks in a little while. Brock Purdy's dropping dimes all over the place. He gained a couple of pounds. He's looking all ripped and stuff. Maybe even added a couple of MPH to his fastball. An improved Brock Purdy mentally, physically, has an entire offseason. Dude was already an MVP candidate last year, Croc. I mean, how much better can the young man get? I'm excited for Brock Purdy. Seeing how he's just taking control of this football team is pretty phenomenal.
It has been phenomenal and very impressive, too, because this has been something that we've seen from the start. In every turn, there have been a lot of people, especially outsiders, thinking that at some point it's not going to look like what it's looked like and he's going to come down to earth. But no, he's just continuing to ascend upward and continue to play better and better. And, earlier today, I commented on something that had to do with him. And I was like, 49ers got Drew Brees Jr. And, Drew Brees is an interesting person because you look at a lot of his accolades, right? Like he was never like NFL MVP, but he was Super Bowl MVP. He's led the league in passing, 7-8 times or whatever it was, led the league in touchdown passes a lot of times. So he put together a lot of terrific seasons. But it's crazy because we never hear anyone say, oh man, top quarterbacks. Like, when's the last time you hear his name come up? You hear everybody else. You hear Tom Brady, you hear Aaron Rodgers during that time. Heck, you'll hear Ben Roethlisberger. I've heard Phillip Rivers' name. I feel like I hear everyone's name but Drew Brees. And I feel like on top of kind of their similar stature, Purdy a little bit stronger in the lower body, but on top of that and kind of the way they look, I think there's some comparisons there where they're almost a guy that performs so well, but is never considered like the great guy in this. Maybe it is because of how he looks, but the more I watch and the more we gather, the more, he plays. And even heading into this training camp and what it's looked like so far, that's a guy, and I don't want to, put comps on him because he's his own person, but the situation and everything surrounding it reminds me a lot of Drew Brees. And we heard that from one of Drew Brees' former teammates last year, Snead, saying that as well. And I think the more he plays is more reminiscent of what Drew Brees was to the New Orleans Saints.
Look, man, people always love to talk about quarterbacks, how tall they are, their arms, and they're 40 times, but how come nobody talks about quads? It's important. You got to have a base, man. You got to have a base to snap off those throws. And Brock Purdy was smart about it too. He said that when he put on some weight and did his offseason conditioning and he was able to go full go this offseason and he couldn't last year, he was cognizant of his athletic ability. He's like, look, I want to get bigger and stronger, but I'm going to put on good weight. I only put on 2 pounds, but it's good weight. Like he was talking about body composition, and he doesn't want to just be big and not be as quick and getting in and out of the pocket like he was before. That's important to him to be an athlete out there and be a playmaker too. So he doesn't want his strength and his workouts to make him more of a statue in the pocket, which is good because it's a huge part of his game. And there's a lot of things that Brock Purdy does that people just don't want to give him credit for. And it doesn't show up enough in the standard way we scout quarterbacks that are super important. And Brock Purdy is like off the charts in some of these things, right? And I think about, like, I was asked this question on the Peacock and Williamson mailbag this week, Croc, and it was like, what could we do to improve the scouting process? How come teams miss so much and draft busts? Should we have a pre-draft mini camp where players actually practice with teams for like a full week, like almost like another Senior Bowl, but for guys who are maybe not seniors or other players or prospects, or do multiple types of Senior Bowls? And there's so many of those. And I think the Senior Bowl is great for teams to learn about a prospect a little bit more. But to me, I think and especially with quarterbacks, we get stuck in the giving extra credit thing, right? Like, if arm strength was just a check mark instead of a 1 out of 10, you know what I mean? Like, if all you had was okay, can he move around and maneuver in the pocket? Okay, it's a check mark. I don't care if he runs a 4.4 or a 4.8. Is he athletic enough to play the quarterback position? Okay, got good feet. That's a check mark. Arm strength. Can he make throws? Okay, that's a check mark. Height, is he over 6 feet? Cool, it's a check mark. He doesn't get extra credit for being 6'5". If you start making check marks instead of giving somebody 5 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10 on certain attributes, all of a sudden Brock Purdy is lit up like a Christmas tree with check marks because he's got everything. He just doesn't have extra height, extra arm, extra 40 time. He doesn't have these things that guys get extra credit for. But he's so great in all the other categories that truly matter about playing quarterback in the NFL. And I think being the last pick in the draft is just going to take him a little bit more time. And even you and I, Croc, early on, I was like, okay, well, let's see more. Do we really believe that was it too good almost? And at some point, he's going to keep playing this well, and you realize, no, it's not too good. This is just how good he is. And I think it's just going to take a little bit more time with Brock than it might for another quarterback that was drafted in a different place and, maybe looks a little bit more impressive on the hoof.
I think a lot of people like to remind us of, Tom Brady in his situation. How many years in did it take for people to acknowledge him as great of a quarterback as he is? And I think he had to listen to a lot of the same chatter as Brock Purdy has so far with, it's the defense and Bill Belichick and he's the mastermind or run game. And he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. But as he continued to play, I think he started to get more and more recognition for being as great as he was. And maybe that's what it's going to be for Brock Purdy, aka Drew Brees. Yeah. As far as the scouting process of quarterbacks, it's not just a quarterback issue when it comes to things like that. I think it's pretty kind of every position. Let's talk about high school, right? I coach high school football at Edison, Stockton, California. And I have these DBs, kind of whatever flavor you want, right? But I have one kid in particular now, Darius McClendon. And McClendon, 5'9", 5'10", maybe, terrific feet. I mean, just from a technical standpoint, I couldn't ask for someone that's coming to me and like better suited to play cornerback. And I can play him outside. I can play him at slot. I can put him at safety. He triggers fast. He diagnoses quick. Well, I have other guys that have offers, and I think the biggest reason as to why they have offers and he doesn't have, the amount as some of the other guys on my team is because, he's not the biggest of guys. And even like at this level, the scouts are like, is he 6'1"? Is he 6'2"? Like those guys are going to get just the more interest. And I think that's part of it at the quarterback position as well. There's like this bias on what society tells us is supposed to look like. It's supposed to look like Justin Herbert. It's supposed to look like, Jordan Love, and why there's even a conversation between those two guys right now, Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. Like Brock Purdy has played better. Like he's been more consistent. He's done all these things, but there's still a conversation. And not to throw a slide at Jordan Love, like he did terrific over the last half of the season. But it was just the last half of the season. We've seen more of it from Brock Purdy on the consistent level and deeper into the postseason. So, everything that he's doing, it's telling you that he's this terrific quarterback, and you don't have to look like Justin Herbert. You don't have to look like some of these other guys with these bazooka arms. But if you get it and you play the position at a high level, which consistently, I mean, he's just doing that over and over now. It just is what it is. He's a terrific quarterback. And but people just got to get that whatever they think the standard is and what this quarterback is supposed to look like in the prototype. You got to get that out of your brain and just say, can the guy play? And that's what I always say with cornerbacks. I don't care if he's 5'9", can he cover? I don't care if Brock Purdy's 6'1", barely, or whatever he is. Can he find the answers? And I think he finds the answers as good as anybody right now.
Yeah, man, you got to be a football player first before we start worrying about how tall you are. And so it's so important, and sometimes does get lost. Some notes from Kyle Shanahan talking about quarterbacks and who has the ability to make changes at the line of scrimmage. There was a big conversation about that post Super Bowl, how it pertains to Brock Purdy, a little bit about the QB2 battle, and some young players like Dee Winters, Danny Gray that have huge opportunities right now. A little shakeup on the offensive line as well to start camp next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. So the formula for winning championships, passion, drive, and patience is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and even level it up to peak performance with superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and a whole lot more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And it couldn't be simpler at eBay Motors. The big green check, you know it fits your car, and you can buy with confidence with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Hey, Peacock, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're Brock Purdy or anyone else, how do you narrow it down to like, I'll put on 2 pounds? Because for me, like, I'll step on the scale in the morning and I'll be 199 pounds.
Yeah.
And then if I eat some pizza and some chicken wings, tomorrow I step on the scale and it's like, and I'm 203, 204. So like, how do these guys narrow it down to where it's like, it's so specific to, I gained 2 pounds this offseason?
When I was in my early 20s, it was a lot harder to gain 2 pounds than it is right now. That's a burrito for lunch now. You know what I mean? So I'm with you there. It's a lot. It's kind of flipped. It's a lot harder to lose those 2 pounds now. I used to not be able to gain weight no matter what I did. I had a terrible diet when I was younger, and I was real skinny. And now I'm trying to have a better diet, and I still can't lose any weight. So with Brock Purdy, I guess it comes with being that age, and as much as he works out, it's probably hard to keep weight on. But
even when I was that age,
the food and the nutrition is so regimented. That's probably part of it, right? Because you're eating at the same time, you get up at the same time, you work out in these days and this time, and I think it's probably a lot more controlled when you're getting on the scale than when you and I are getting on the scale. That's got to be part of it.
People ask me like, man, how much did you weigh, when you were playing ball? And I'm like, for the most part, I was between 194 and 197. Like, I knew there was a range I was going to be between. Like, I was going to weigh somewhere between 194 and 197. And those were like in my Jets days. I think after that, when I was, especially like my last year in the Arena League, I was like 198 to 200. But I knew I was going to be kind of in that window. Now, if I woke up and took a poop, that it might change, or if I ate something, or if maybe I drank a little alcohol, I know it could kind of fluctuate depending on what I ate. Did something have a little bit more sodium in it? But I knew it was always kind of a 2 pound range. But he was so specific with just, I gained 2 pounds. And I think for women mostly, and I do want to apologize. I definitely made a reference before about, who was I talking about? Brandon Aiyuk, and saying that he was acting like a female. And one of our listeners reached out to me and told me how she felt. I'm like, man, I really apologize. I wasn't even thinking about like how that would offend someone, and it offended her. So I apologize to all the women out there where I kind of basically said that you guys go about things a different way and complain. Like, I was wrong for that. So apologize. But I am going to say this about women, and this is no slight at them. I think women losing and gaining weight is far more specific than men. Like 2 pounds on a woman, like trying to lose weight or trying to gain weight, it shows up a lot different. If they lose 2 pounds, you can really see it more. If they gain 2 pounds, you can see it more. And I've noticed that difference with men, like women, but men, our weight, I think it fluctuates a little easier and a little bit harder to tell between 2 pounds. But you start losing, 5 to 10 pounds, then that's when you really can start to tell.
Man, I don't know what women you're talking to that will even give you a number, Croc.
I've watched my wife
asking the women in my life what the number even is, and I don't know if I'd get the right answer. I don't know. I probably wouldn't get an answer at all.
I get the answer from my wife. Like, she'll tell me, like, man, I've been doing this and doing that. I've been working hard, and gosh, it's like a half-pound difference. And then me is like, I do something for a week, and she's like, how'd you drop 10 pounds in a week? It's just like so drastically different between the male and female's anatomy.
It does go up and down quite a bit. I need to get a nutritionist, maybe, is what I need to do. You know how you mentioned drinking. That's a bad one to me. And I love to have like a cocktail at night, maybe have a beer. I'll go play slow pitch softball, go have a couple beers after. I put more calories in having beer than, and look, I'm a pretty good hitter. I'm running the bases a lot. I'm still putting on more calories having beer after the game. So it's a net loss for me to even go out and do something active sometimes.
I think alcohol is probably one of the biggest issues that I think like people and especially our 30 up, I think that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to like our weight. We're not nearly as active as we were when we were younger, and it shows up in so many different ways.
Kim is corroborating, Croc, what you're talking about with the weight loss.
Yeah.
Tanya in the house as well. Shout out to all the listeners jumping in our live episode here. It feels like everyone's talking about Dobbs and nobody's talking about Brandon Allen in that QB2 battle right now. Croc, is this a battle that's only a battle in name? Because I feel like Brandon Allen's a pretty big underdog to Joshua Dobbs for that quarterback 2 slot.
I think coming into this, it felt like Dobbs was going to be kind of the favorite, right? Unless you got something, sneaky out of the kid from TCU to Nebraska. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah, Mordecai. So unless there was something you get out of him, it almost felt like it's like a rigged fight. Like, nah, this is going to be QB2. It's going to be Dobbs. And he's a guy who's smart. He's been in multiple offensive schemes. We talked about it before when we were discussing the quarterbacks. Maybe not a guy that we want to see have to start 5-6 games, but if he has to fill in for a game or two, I think you feel very confident about what he can do for your team in that amount of games. And then more than that, we saw last year, it starts to get a little iffy.
We'll probably have to see a little bit more in those joint practices and in the preseason before we can call a winner, but it does feel like Dobbs has a nice early edge. So probably a winner to start camp for Joshua Dobbs. One thing I forgot to talk about with Brock Purdy that Shanahan mentioned in the Kawakami podcast was about the offensive line and calling protections. And I know it's something you wanted to talk about, Croc, but essentially it's not that Kyle Shanahan doesn't want to let his quarterback call protections, but there's so much else going on. He almost wants to take that off their plate, and all the quarterbacks he's ever had appreciate that it's not on their plate.
So I was always under the assumption, and I think I got this from Steve Young. Listen to Steve Young. I think Steve Young went in, talked to Kyle Shanahan, and the way that Steve Young communicated that to the listeners of KBR was, oh yeah, you don't have to change anything. All the answers are in the play. So you don't have to change the protection or anything like that. There's an answer to everything. And I was like, wow, really? Like, that's unique. So what if it's not a great look? You still have to call the play, like you don't check anything. So I just thought they were never able to do it. But come to find out, he's like, hey, if you want to, go ahead. And I think he talked about Kirk Cousins, where Kirk Cousins was like, hey, can I check into these different looks and can I do this? And he's like, yeah, sure. But it takes them longer to snap the ball, as famously made famous by Peyton Manning. Right? How long did it take Peyton Manning to snap the ball? Right? He's Omaha alert this, and he's calling out all these different things, and he finally gets to it. Kyle Shanahan wants to take that off of his quarterback's plate and just say, no, understand where everybody's going to be at, snap the ball, and the defense should tell you where to go with the ball as opposed to having to change anything. But I thought he wanted to control that, and he was just very controlling over that. I'm learning he's maybe not as controlling as we've been told or led to believe. And he does give these guys a lot more freedom if that's what they want to do. He just doesn't quite recommend it because he's like, there's an answer to everything within the play. You should not need to do that. But if you need to, like, you can.
Yeah, I thought it was just there's so much motion and so much other stuff going on. Like, he didn't want his quarterbacks making those calls. So we'll see if someday Brock Purdy decides, you know what, I want to make those calls because I don't want to get hit in the Super Bowl by Chris Jones and I want to win the stinking Super Bowl. So maybe that's.
I saw it in the playoffs with Jordan Love, and you know, they're coming from a similar kind of system. Everybody does things differently, and even Kyle with talking about how he learned. He was first with Gruden, and Gruden, he's like, you know, the quarterback is responsible for changing everything, and then he goes to Kubiak, and Kubiak absolutely 100% does not let you change anything. So he was like, you know, I'm somewhere right in the middle where I don't need you to change everything. If you want to, you can, but I'm not going to be full John Gruden where you have to change everything. And I thought that was interesting. But I saw in the playoffs against the Cowboys, Jordan Love checking out of stuff and setting different things and then calling plays and throwing a touchdown. I'm like, wow, like, he has more responsibility than the 49ers quarterback. Come to find out, he just must have wanted to do that. And I was like, I don't think my guy needs to do that.
And hearing Tom Brady talk recently, he talked about that. He was more talking about changing plays at the line, which obviously the 49ers have 2 plays and they can to another one. But he wants all that control. Like, he wants to be able to get you into the right play no matter what every single time. And he would probably fight with Kyle if you didn't want him to let him do that. Speaking of, you know, Kyle wanting or asking Tom Brady to come play one season last year. Tom Brady did not, but I would have a feeling that Tom Brady would want all the responsibility possible. But he's also 45-year-old quarterback that's played in the league for 20 years. He's not, you know, entering his 3rd season either. But it's probably something you have to practice doing. It's like, you're not going to just start doing it one day if you don't already do it. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling thing. It's like either you're asked to do it and you do it all the time, or you don't ever do it. Right? That's what it feels like to me, because that's the way it's been in Kyle's offense. Is we don't see quarterbacks do it because it'd be weird if they did all of a sudden.
It sounded like he was saying it's a very small percentage of time where the play that he calls, there's no right answer to the defense. And he said, you know, it may bite us in the butt 3 times, but that's 3 times out of 65 plays where the answer is there. So do you want to put more on your plate and have you thinking more and maybe potentially playing a little bit slower because you want to add more things when it's typically not necessary?
Next, some big winners early in camp, mostly just because of the opportunity they have to earn not only a roster spot, but in some cases, like Dee Winters, maybe a starting spot at weak side linebacker. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools you need to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just some other job board either. It's LinkedIn helps you hire the right professionals that you can't find anywhere else, which is key because some of those job seekers aren't actually seeking a job, but they might be open to the perfect role, your role, that they see on LinkedIn because they're already there and they're not searching on another job board. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. And on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So early reports, Dee Winters working with the ones, and Kyle Shanahan not shy about saying how good Dee Winters has looked. Fred Warner talking about Dee Winters, saying he was one of the best players all spring for the 49ers, looking like he might be making his year 2 jump, wearing number 53, which is going to take some getting used to, and apparently jumping in with the first unit at weak side linebacker with Dre Greenlaw out. And they're built similarly. Dre Greenlaw probably won't play in the early going of the season, might miss half the season. Who knows when he'll be back from his Achilles injury, but he's not going to start the season. So 2nd-year player, a 6th-round pick, Dee Winters out of TCU. We saw him a little bit last year. We might see him a lot this year, a huge opportunity for him. And if you start to look good as a starter, all of a sudden Dre Greenlaw comes back. It's like, oh, what do? Do you let the veteran move on after the season? Do you start fielding calls for the young player? Do you start moving guys around so you can get Dee Winters on the field more? Like, you really have a huge opportunity to make or break your career this training camp for Dee Winters.
I think what you do, and the 49ers have kind of showed us the recipe already. It was the Jaquiski Tart and Talanoa Hufanga situation. Tart out, Hufanga comes in, Hufanga plays well, Tart comes back from his injury, and it's like, hey, you know what, Tart? Hold on. Let me see something a little bit. So just stay out for this series here. All right, stay out for this series. Okay, you go back in. Okay, hey, but Tart, come back. Let's get you a little rest. I just don't want you to get tired. Let's get Hufanga out there a little bit more. You start to see that veterans reps get cut a little bit, and it's tough when you're talking about, especially Dre Greenlaw, because when people talk about the 49ers linebackers, it's the best linebacking group in the NFL, but not because of Dee Winters and Fred Warner. It's because of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. So you are losing a little bit with not having him out there. But if you have a young guy like Dee Winters, and we were wondering between Winters, Jalen Graham, which one of these young guys is going to take that opportunity head on and really take advantage of it right now, and not just from training camp practices. It sounds like going all the way to spring OTAs. When people say OTAs don't matter, it sounds like it does matter just a little bit for a guy starting to grow, gain his confidence, and continue to play well into training camp. That's a really good sign for the 49ers and Dee Winters.
Man, and I think the big player I want to shout out in the early going, and look, it's been 2 practices so far, but maybe the biggest winner of camp is a guy who might not have had a job at all a month from now because of the logjam at wide receiver for the 49ers. But first round pick, Ricky Pearsall, not practicing, starting the camp on NFI list. He might be back next week, so there might be fewer opportunities for someone like Danny Gray. But with the hold in from Brandon Aiyuk, that's just more reps for a lot of guys. And I think the one making the most out of it right now is Danny Gray. He's been making plays in the first 2 days of practice and maybe getting reps he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So again, this is another player with a huge opportunity. I think, Dee Winters was going to make the roster. Danny Gray, we had already kind of penciled him off of the roster after the draft, after drafting 2 more guys, how little he's played in his NFL career, not getting activated after he was healthy last year. Those were big red flags. And now he looks like he's playing hard, practicing hard. He looks fast out there and he's making some plays. And it's a huge opportunity for him. And maybe he's even auditioning for another roster, but he's getting more looks. And it's important for him to make the most of him out of him for, in year 3 for Danny Gray to make himself into an NFL player and have an NFL career and prove he's worthy of an NFL roster, even if it's not with the 49ers after the end of camp.
Danny Gray kind of reminds me of this kid I have in my secondary. I got a bunch of different guys. I said I have just all kind of flavors. And there's one kid in particular, and I actually told this to him today. I said, kid, listen, when you're high, like your peak, is better than everybody that we have here in the secondary. You got the feet, you got the speed, you got the hips, you got the change of direction. Like, you're physical. Like, we can count on. I think you're one of the best tacklers, even though you're one of my smallest DBs. But from play to play, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to get from you. So you're not starting right now, which you should start. And he can play any position in my secondary. That's kind of like Danny Gray, where it's a guy who has all this ability, right? He has the speed. He has the changer. He got the hips. He has all these things. And it's about putting it together to be more consistent. And a guy like that has that kind of potential to be able to win vertically. If you can just learn to be more consistent with sitting your routes down, setting them up, understanding how to attack certain leverages, right? Some of the best receivers in the league aren't that fast, but they understand how to attack certain aspects of the cornerback and how to use that against them and turn them around and do these things. If he can hone in on being able to do those things and play fast and do the things Kyle wants and be more consistent, then now here's your role. And here's what you're going to be on the field. And now all of a sudden, 49ers have an element of their game that they just don't have with Aiyuk, Debo, Pearsall, guys that can run. And we see it especially with Debo, like the run after catch is special, but a pure blazer, right? Like the 49ers, they got guys who can run. Aiyuk can win vertically, but that's not where he's going to make his money. And for Danny Gray, you were drafted to make your money there, but we haven't quite been able to see it because he's lacked maybe in some of the other areas. And I'm definitely excited to continue to hear really good reports, and I'm really excited to go out there. We'll be out there Tuesday, Peacock and I, with Winky. So make sure you guys, say what's up to us. But with my own eyes, what does it look like from Danny Gray? Like, how is he preparing in indies, right? When they're just warming up and they're going through indies and they're doing all the route stuff, like, what does it look like? Is he focusing on the fine details of that? Because the more you do that, it carries over to everything else, and then you start to see a better version of Danny Gray.
Brian in the chat says, Locked On 49ers is telling me to draft Danny Gray in fantasy tonight. No, we're not saying that. Don't draft Danny Gray. You know who you need to draft, though, is Deebo Samuel. I feel like the 49ers wide receivers, whoever has the most hype coming into a year, draft the other guy. And remember, after the big year for Deebo Samuel, then it was Brandon Aiyuk's turn, right? And the year before, when Deebo went crazy in 2021, everybody was all over Brandon Aiyuk, remember? And then Kyle Shanahan let us know, actually, no, this is a doghouse year. And we were telling people, don't sleep on Deebo Samuel that offseason. I think this is the Deebo Samuel year. He's wearing number 1. He looks like he's in phenomenal shape. I'm drafting Deebo Samuel in my fantasy leagues. Plus, he's going after Brandon Aiyuk in most cases. So you can get him a little bit later. And he's going to be a big part of the offense. They're going to force the ball into his hands. So my advice with 49ers offensive players, the guy that might be the best bargain right now is probably Deebo Samuel and maybe George Kittle. And you're not getting Christian McCaffrey unless you're drafting 1.1 anyway.
When it comes to Deebo Samuel, we know he's going to get his touches, right? Like, my biggest complaint last year was like, man, they don't do enough to get, I need to get more targets. You typically don't have to complain about Deebo, and maybe it won't be a bunch of targets, but he'll get his touches. So whether it's screens, whether they're handing the ball off to him, especially for fantasy football purposes, because he's going to get running opportunities, and all of a sudden they flip it to him, and then he just races to the end zone, 20-yard touchdown run, right? Like, there's just more fantasy opportunities for Deebo Samuel. And that's not to say that Aiyuk can't lead in fantasy. Maybe he gets more catches. Maybe this year he gets even more touchdowns. But it's hard to kind of shake that 14 touchdown season that we saw from Deebo Samuel, and the way that he did it was receiving and rushing. And I don't think that's going to change. I think he's going to be a big part of his offense. I think we know that's going to be very consistent. And even a game where he might only have 3 catches, there might be two more carries, and one of those might be a touchdown. So fantasy purposes, I tend to lean towards Deebo Samuel a lot.
Last quick note here on camp from the first few days, and next week when we're there, I'm going to focus a little bit more probably on the lines, but a little shakeup on the offensive line. One for Jalen Moore starting at left tackle in place of Trent Williams, who's holding out now currently. Some mixed reports on Jalen Moore. I think he had a rough first day and rebounded a little bit on the second day. Apparently had some nice blocks. I was talking to Jordan Elliott of NBC Sports Bay Area, who said he had some really nice blocks against Nick Bosa. And there was a lot of time in the pocket for Brock Purdy on a lot of dropbacks on day 2 of camp. So, and it's important reps for him to be ready to play, because Trent Williams, even if he comes back, he's going to miss a couple of games, kind of does every single year. And you hope it's not a prolonged absence with this contract negotiation for Trent Williams with the 49ers. But, big opportunities there. But another note is that with Jake Brendel working in slowly after having an injury this offseason, John Feliciano was running with the ones at center at camp on Thursday, and Spencer Burford was at right guard. So interesting that I don't think it means anything for Brendel, but it just tells me that they like Feliciano. He's going to start somewhere. So it's going to be guard or center. The battle might even be between Brendel and Brendel at center. And do they like that better than if they have Feliciano at guard or at center? And it sounds like Pooney's playing more left guard and is not really in the mix at right guard. We'll see if that changes in camp, but that's also something I'm going to look at, because I feel like my suspicions are becoming true, Croc, where that 2024 draft class is all about 2025. And usually that's the case. Not many rookies just jump in and start. I really think they're planning on Pooney jumping in for Aaron Banks and letting him walk, because they got to pay too many guys. They're not going to pay a guard top money. Maybe letting Hufanga walk, let Malik Mustafa, who's had a great start to camp, jump in there. But next year, unless Hufanga can't go early on, we'll see if Mustafa shows enough to start early in the season as a rookie at strong safety. If Mustafa's not ready to go, but George Odom has been playing in front of Mustafa in camp so far at strong safety without Talanoa Hufanga. Renardo Green is more about 2025 after one of Ward or Diamador Lenore walk in free agency and they signed the other guy. Ricky Pearsall is more about, next season after either Debo or Aiyuk are gone. I just really feel like those top four picks for the 49ers, they were really looking ahead at guys that might be gone this year that they're replacing next year, and they're just getting their feet wet in year one.
I like how you mentioned, Feliciano and kind of that situation between Burford and Brendel. And it sounds to me like they're just going to figure out who the best five are.
Yeah.
And whatever that combination looks like. So, if it is eventually Feliciano at center and Burford at guard, then all right. But if they like the combination of, Brendel at center and Feliciano at right guard, then they know that they can go that route. And I think coaches ideally like kind of having that ability to have a little bit more flexibility at different positions to find out exactly what the best combination of guys is going to be to do the job. And, I've talked a lot about the offensive line being an O-line where the 49ers have figured out how to have the most efficient quarterback in the league and, the league leading rusher in the league and all these weapons that, three receivers or pass catchers that were over 1,000 total yards, right? So clearly they've figured out an offensive line, a combination of guys that can get the job done. Can they improve on that with guys that are in-house right now? That's going to be a big challenge, but I think that's what they're looking into with those few guys right there in the middle.
All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. Have a great weekend. If you want more 49ers coverage, go check out my other podcast. It's YouTube only, OT with BP, Overtime with Brian Peacock. I was with Jason Aponte. We were kind of doing a weekly thing this offseason. Hadn't done it because of certain circumstances last couple of weeks, but back at it this evening, Thursday evening, with a long live show. And then Brad Graham of the SF Niners, who was at camp, jumped in to give us some insight. Jordan Elliott of NBC Sports Bay Area jumped into the podcast to give us some insight as well. So go check out OT with BP on YouTube. Subscribe while you're there. Lots of good 49ers talk and insight from some folks at camp. And Croc and I will be back next week. And we'll see you all at camp if anybody's going to be there on Tuesday. So looking forward to that. Make sure you subscribe here at Locked On 49ers on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And Croc and I back next week right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.